Hey everybody, this is Scott Mann, CEO and founder of the Stability Institute, where we broker knowledge and connect stability professionals on tough stability problems all over the world. And I want to thank you for dialing in to another one of our video series that focuses on stability tradecraft and on partner organizations that are out there doing great work. And today is certainly no exception to that. Got my good buddy Jim Hake here, who has actually hosted us out at the Spirit of America office out in lovely LA. And so Jim is the CEO and founder of Spirit of America. It's a nonprofit organization, and Jim, I just want to make sure I've got the mission statement right, which has the mission of supporting the safety and success of Americans serving abroad and the local people and partners they seek to help. And so first of all, Jim, thanks for having us out here today. It's awesome to be here. And before we get into it, I just want to tell you personally, as a guy who former Green Beret and has worked closely with what you guys do with Village Stability and all of the support you've rendered at the village and community levels all over Afghanistan. Really appreciate what you guys do. I'm looking around your office right here. There's almost no one in here. It's because they're all out in the field supporting our guys.
That's right.
So thanks for having us, and thanks for what the Spirit of America does.
Thanks, Scott.
It's an awesome organization. And just a little for our members who don't know, there's a lot of content on the Stability Institute about Spirit of America. We've posted their information flyers. I've repurposed some content that they've pushed out. There's a lot there already. But this interview with Jim is extremely important because I think what it will do is give all of our viewers and our members more insight on how they can possibly work with you going into the future. But I met Jim when Village Stability operations were still underway quite a bit in Afghanistan. He was good enough to come to an academic week, and he and I have worked very closely together on linking up Spirit of America with the special operations community, and that he just continues to expand that. So Jim, let's jump right into it. What led you, you're a guy who has done everything in the tech sector, everything in the civilian sector, extremely successful. What led you to stand up an organization like Spirit of America?
Well, there were two things. The first one were the attacks of 9/11.
Okay.
And so after 9/11, I wanted to do something to help. And I didn't have any government or military background at all, but I did have a very deep belief that what our country stands for in the world matters, not just to Americans, but for the world. And I wanted to do my part to help. My dad, as you know, had served in World War II. He and his generation did their part. I wanted to do mine. And it took a while because I didn't have any relevant experience really, or I didn't think I had any relevant experience. No military, no NGO experience, no government experience, no nonprofit experience. So it took a while to figure out what made sense to do that would actually be useful. Because my background as an entrepreneur, I had done enough to know the difference between what sounds good and what is good. And I didn't want to do something that just felt good to some business guy in Los Angeles, but didn't have a real impact on the ground in these parts of the world. So I was learning about a special forces team in Afghanistan, and Sergeant First Class Jay Smith back in 2003 that led to the light bulb moment that became Spirit of America.
Okay. Now, I covered the mission statement and certainly could never do as good a job as you could have just describing your vision for Spirit of America and really what they do. Tell us a little bit more about what Spirit of America does, kind of at the community level, what kind of things they're out there doing.
Sure. So the broad idea is to bring the power and the capabilities of the American people and private sector in direct support of the mission success of deployed military personnel in Afghanistan, West Africa, South America, Southeast Asia. So how that works, for example, is we provide humanitarian and economic assistance in direct response to what troops and diplomats on the ground say is needed to support the success of their mission and to help the local population in one way or another. So a classic example, in fact, we just have a project that came in this morning that's helping a group of Afghan women with sewing machines, because the ODA in this case wants to acknowledge and support a community that had helped stand up the ALP. And one way to do that is through sewing machines for women so that they can better provide for their families and help get additional commerce going in an area, and also through that additional commerce reduce the threat of IEDs. So anyway, Spirit of America provides sewing machines, fabric, thread, needles, in that case, in support of an ODA and in support of Afghan women.
Well, let's pull the thread on that. I couldn't resist. But let's look at that a little deeper, because the way that you guys do that, the way that you're able to affect these projects, I mean, it's pretty streamlined stuff. I mean, tell us a little bit about how that works, how you're able to get through these projects.
Yeah, so our process is very decentralized. We get higher level guidance. We work under guidance from SOGIDF-A in Afghanistan, under guidance from SOC Africa in Africa. But we work on the ground with the team that's closest to the problem or challenge. So we have personnel in Afghanistan who are working side by side with special operations forces in Afghanistan. Same thing in West Africa. So we are literally there to be able to have the kind of conversations both with the U.S. team and with the Afghan partners that you need to figure out what actually really makes sense to do and what will both support the objectives with the local population, but also support the broader mission objectives of the U.S. team.
Okay. And so you've mentioned already that you're obviously well beyond Afghanistan now. Talk to me a little bit about some of the places that you guys are operating and where you kind of see it going.
Well, the place where we focus is where there is an intersection of national security interest, humanitarian need, and where we can make a difference with what Spirit of America does, with our decentralized, privately funded, non-neutral approach. So where that is right now, one of our most interesting projects in the last couple of years has been in Mauritania in West Africa. And that's a classic example of what in this case, Army Civil Affairs captain operating out of, under USASOC and SOCOM guidance, working under SOC Africa in Mauritania, and working under the U.S. ambassador in Mauritania, was basically tasked with Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb is in the eastern part of the country, eastern part of Mauritania, along a border area with Mali, causing problems. Get out there, figure it out, and do something. That was the guidance to the captain. So he did that, fabulous job. And what he understood was that the livestock health was the #1 issue of concern to the local population. So long story short, we did a couple of things to support that mission and his various objectives, the various objectives of him and his team out there. So toward the goal of helping the local population with their #1 issue. What we ended up doing was, as Spirit of America, was funding the training and equipping and providing business assistance to locally chosen men who went into business as veterinarians to make money solving their community's biggest problem. And that's worked beautifully. These guys, 2 years later, these guys are still at it. They're making money. We just saw them 2 weeks ago. And they're at it, right? So that was one objective. The other was that project provided the U.S. team with the ability to access and engage with key communities to better build those relationships and better influence the local environment. It was also part of a shaping operation for Operation Flintlock. So the big military exercise came at the tail end of all the training and everything else we'd done in these communities. And the U.S. Team and the other partners in Operation Flintlock were welcomed at that point as members of the family. So great for that. And it also created linkages between these villages and the regional government in Mauritania and the national government. So there were second, third, fourth, fifth order effects that were part of what, on the surface of it, was simple training of veterinarians. So anyway, it's a great example of the private-public approach that we have, where we were able to do something by setting up guys in business to make money that would be really impossible to do for a military team with U.S. government funds.
I'm going to call a bit of an audible on you here, Jim, in the sense that you hit on something I think is just critical. Is I get the question all the time, is village stability operations, are those kinds of activities relevant beyond Afghanistan? And really what you've just described, is the essence of village stability operations. Everybody gets myopically focused on, the local militia or the Afghan local police, but in reality, is, as you know, that's symptomatic of a much deeper problem.
Right.
And it's really those societal issues, those community issues, the bottom-up stuff, the stability stuff that's really impactful.
Right.
And the vignette you just gave, I think, gives a wonderful description of how you guys operate, not just in Afghanistan, but all over the world.
Right, and it's a great point that you make, because one of the things that project did, I focus on our relationship with the U.S. team in that case, but the Mauritanian military were side by side with the U.S. team every step along the way. So one of the challenges the Mauritanian military has is, they don't have relationships in these villages either. And so how do you get that relationship going? Because everybody wants it, but it's hard to do if you just go in and you start having conversations and what are you here for? And anyway, so the support that we provided, because it was the Mauritanian military was really the entity that was seen as bringing us into these communities. So, in the spirit of America, and that we were helpful, reflected really well on the Mauritanians and on their regional and national government, even though we were a private sector organization. So, having learned from great officers like you, we understand that broader picture. And so our guys are able to think about that in ultimately delivering our assistance, to understand that it's not just the product, if you will, that's delivered. It's that whole process of how you go about it that really is the main event.
No, that's right. And just to dive into that part a little deeper as far as the value proposition, and I really want to emphasize to our members that identifying those sources of instability at a community level, those are the things that truly destabilize areas, and those are the things that are exploited by extremists.
Right.
Whether it's drought or conflict resolution or tribal dynamics or just economic development. But you said something, or Spirit of America had something in one of your fact papers where you guys basically highlighted the fact that a lot of these societal challenges simply exceed the scope and capacity of a lot of DOD and the guys at SOF that are working these problem sets, and that they really require the collective power of American society, of the civil sector, private sector, to come in and help sort those out.
Right.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, you take this Army captain again. Now, he did, number one, he's got to be trained in every conventional dimension of being in the U.S. military. So that's, right. Most people would consider that enough, right? But he's also got to be able to engage with and do these assessments in sub-Saharan Africa. So he's got to do the part, in addition to the conventional military piece, which is getting out there, figuring out what the issues are. So to have him do those first two things and expect him to be an expert in whatever issue might come up, whether it's livestock health, could have just as easily been water or healthcare. Who knows? The point is that was identified by the local community as the issue. So to expect that person, that captain, to be able to have all that figured out and to be able to devise a solution on his own, it's just, no one in the world can do that. So to be able to bring in a flexible private sector organization like ours to help in the design and delivery of a solution, and we didn't rely on ourselves either. Actually, the first thing that we did was build an expert network to advise Spirit of America and the Army captain and his team on what are the smart things to do. So, because none of us were experts in livestock health in sub-Saharan Africa. So that expert network had someone from Vets Without Borders, Heifer International, a great USDA rep from Senegal, a Tufts professor who had done community animal health worker work in Afghanistan. And so that took about 2 weeks to put together a mini brain trust that we were able to tap into. So if you view that Army captain again, you're down there out in what most people would consider to be no man's land. And now all of a sudden you have this giant brain to tap into to help you figure out what to do. That is a good day.
It absolutely is, and I really want to emphasize that to our members that are looking to work in these rough places. You guys aren't everywhere, but you are in a lot of the places where our folks are in the special operations community, and not just special operations, but other entities of the U.S. government that are working stability issues in these tough places. And so you hit on something really key. It's not just the fact that you guys are in the communities, but you also believe in the network approach. I see your sign up here, it takes a network. These are the same kind of principles that Special Operations has worked under in the VSO arena with Village Stability Coordination Centers and things like that under General Miller. So, you follow the backside approach of leveraging that network to crash on problems as well.
Right, that's it. And so what we're able to bring to bear is that private sector network that the U.S. government, the military, haven't focused on building, and it's easy for us to do. So again, when you can tap into that network, it makes us, when you add what the private sector and American people can do to what the U.S. government and the military can do, that is how we as a country win in these environments. And so we're able to bring in that private sector network part of it.
And I just want to, the trifecta to me in the way that you've set this whole thing up. You get out there in the communities, you guys get their boots dirty, you've got a massive network approach, but you've also got some horsepower at the advisory level. Tell us a few of the folks that you have on the advisory board, because I think it gives some perspective on the level at which you're able to pull expertise and bring champions to bear.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the quote, "It takes a network." That's actually a quote, as you know, of General Stan McChrystal.
Right.
And General McChrystal has been on our advisory board for the last few years, and he has made an enormous intellectual contribution to how we think about the work that we do. And really, we've learned a lot from what he did while he was serving, both at JSOC and ISAF. And you can look from how our office is organized here, an open office architecture so that it makes it much more communicative and collaborative among the team, to understanding the principles of openness and shared consciousness and shared purpose. Those were, we weren't thinking about those in exactly the same way until General McChrystal came along and helped us understand how the pioneering work that he had done in the military actually applied to this other domain. So if you view the JSOC work that he did at JSOC, and I don't consider myself any sort of an expert on this, but what the transformation that he did when he was fighting Al-Qaeda in Iraq with JSOC was to decentralize and create a speed and flexibility in those direct action missions, which was game-changing, right? Which some say actually is what turned around the war in Iraq. Well, the thing that we're doing is trying to match that same kind of speed, flexibility, and targeting, but over on the non-lethal domain.
Sure.
And it's not, and that's an area where we've not really seen those things applied in the same way. Unfortunately, much aid and assistance in the conventional approaches tends to start big and then try to squeeze down into a small place. And my background, as you know, is as an entrepreneur, and that's always bottom up. It's always ground level, and if it works, you do more of it. But you don't start really big and try to make it small. You start small and try to make it big.
Sure.
And I think that's more in keeping with the missions and challenges that SF personnel are having in various parts of the world.
Right. Let's talk about Afghanistan for a second. There's a lot of change going on there, and the transition, the drawdown. How do you see things going there, and what are our challenges and opportunities going into 2014 and beyond?
Well, it's hard to know. I'm hopeful about the recent elections, and there were times in Iraq that people thought it was entirely hopeless, and Iraq is in its own tough spot right now. But things can turn around in ways that are somewhat unexpected, and ultimately it depends on what the local population is really willing to stand up and do themselves. What I hope, and the jury is out on this, is that the United States will be a partner of Afghanistan's. I don't know what the right troop number is. I don't know, what the budget numbers ought to be. But the idea to me that we might just turn our back on that country is worrying, and if it happens, is shameful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so I guess in that regard, talking about partnerships and networks, your organization, the Stability Institute, Joanne Herring of Charlie Wilson's War with the Marshall Foundation, and all of the other NGOs that are out there, nonprofits that are doing great work. There's going to have to be, I think, some increased focus on private-public partnership in Afghanistan and other places like never before. I mean, we're going to have more collaboration. How do you see that playing out in the future?
Well, I mean, there are organizations on the ground that have done just a fabulous job in Afghanistan. It's operating on the same kind of basis that I mentioned a moment ago, which is on a small scale, relatively small scale, at the community level. And I think that, it certainly works better in a country like Afghanistan, which is decentralized to begin with.
Right.
So the main thing that for those organizations to continue their work depends on donor support, private donor support principally. And again, in the world of philanthropy, I hope that the donor community sticks with those organizations who have not been government contractors, but who have been down there doing the hard, unglamorous work of really meeting the needs of communities and helping those communities get a better start on the road to the future.
No, I agreed 100%. And it's beyond Afghanistan. It's not just Afghanistan that we're going to need that kind of donor support. You've authored a book, 101 Ways to Help the Cause in Afghanistan, that outlines 65 organizations that are out there doing the kinds of things that you just talked about. Can you talk a little bit about that book and where we might find it?
Sure.
Because that would be obviously a huge tool to a lot of our guys out there doing this kind of work.
Well, it's the book is available on Amazon, and so that's where you would find it. And the idea behind it was to give some specific examples, many different organizations in there focused on both helping the Afghan people and a good number of them which are helping the veterans who have served in Afghanistan.
Okay, and if you're constantly expanding the effort of Spirit of America, if folks in the Special Operations community or DoD or U.S. government want to make connections with you ahead of time before they go into country or into a certain area, or even to talk about a new area, what should they do?
Sure. The easiest thing is to send us an email. The contact information is on our website, spiritofamerica.net. The email address is staff, S-T-A-F-F, @spiritofamerica.net. And that will get routed to the right person based on the geography that we're talking about, or based on the military unit that the person is serving within. So that will trigger our team linking up with you or whomever it is to have you understand what we can do, where we can do it, how it works, what the various legal authorities are associated with it, and all that's good. So we can tell people that. But just a simple email will really trigger the process. The key to us is speed and fluid communications. It doesn't take a 4-month process to put together a 30-page proposal. We get going with an email and a conversation and apply what we call rapid prototyping to figure out whether it is something we can do, whether it makes sense to do, and all that.
Okay, no, that's perfect. And we've gone over how to contact you. If any of our members have trouble contacting you for whatever reason, you can also contact us at Ask the Institute. Jim and I are communicating all the time, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with him or his folks as well. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything that on the stability front, anything that you're seeing, emerging trends, things that our members ought to be thinking about as we go forward from your foxhole?
Well, the thing that I would say is, no one entity, no one government, no one military, no one organization can do it all alone. So meeting the security challenges which are out there, the war in Afghanistan may be winding down, but our enemies and adversaries are winding up. And that's just a sad fact of life. So meeting those challenges requires collaborative solutions. It requires working with private sector organizations like ours, working with the interagency team. This is all in these environments outside of Afghanistan. So I would say the temptation is always to want to figure it out and do it. I have that temptation as an entrepreneur. It doesn't work that well in these environments. So reach out beyond yourself and build the kind of relationships and the kind of network that can help you win.
Yeah, I would say to that degree that we don't collaborate at our peril.
Right.
In this day and age. I mean, the industrial age of just stovepiping it, those days are gone.
Right.
Well, Jim, listen, we've covered a lot of ground. I really appreciate you hosting us today and talking with us. I mean, a lot of topics, and I think we're probably going to be working even closer as we go into 2014 and beyond. But again, thanks for everything that the Spirit of America does and for hosting us today. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for coming by. Great to chat with you again.
Okay, and to our members, appreciate you watching today. I know you probably found this to be an extremely helpful video segment, and if you have any questions about, again, what Spirit of America is out there doing, just go to our search category and type it in, and you'll see all of their information products there, and just go to their website as well. Also, don't forget to share this segment with your social contacts. Tweet it. Like it, forward it, anything you need to do to get it out there and help folks become more aware of what Spirit of America is doing, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's about building that network, sustaining that message, and getting this in front of the people that need it. And there's a lot of people out there that could really benefit from what these guys are doing in these rough places, and they may not know it's available. So do your part, reach out to your contacts, and help keep spreading the word. Until next time, this is Scott Mann, CEO and founder of Stability Institute. Thanks for watching.